RuneScape tells the story of a grand adventure where your character has to deal with deadly and dangerous foes such as murderous demons, evil gods, and worst of all, autotypers at the GE. Some of us have spent thousands of hours on a single account, and I don't know about you, but I've never really thought too hard about what's going on in the world we play in. I mean, Gielinor is a pretty messed up place. We're told that we start in the year 169 of the 5th age of Gielinor, a lawless time where it seems no one can get anything done without the player's intervention. By the time of the 6th age, the player has already dealt with several apocalyptic threats, like baking a cake or killing a vampire taking a quick nap in his house. But what happened before we logged in for the first time? What's our character's character? Their past? How can they die and respawn, and how can I learn that skill? There's a lot of details we don't know, but at the same time, you might be surprised at just how much we do. Hello RuneScape, my name is Woolmisted and I hope you're all doing well. This video is going to be a little different from the recent ones. It's still RuneScape history, but it leans more on the lore plus a few of my own opinions. I just find the topic of the player's backstory really interesting. I know that we're meant to be a blank slate to self-insert into, but we do learn a few things or two about our history, so I want to share it with you. Sue me. The adventurer has done a lot of good for Gielinor in a pretty short amount of time. Lore-wise, it's only taken a year to go from a nobody to a hero. Or 13 years. Possibly. Both Reldo and Sliske claims there's been years since various events, but why haven't the player aged at all? I don't know, this timeline stuff was recently introduced and isn't really important for this video. Anyway, during the Fate of the Gods quest, Azanadra claims the player isn't even a human anymore but something else. That's one hell of a leap for someone who was a nobody a couple years prior. Although my mom once told me the same thing when I took the last slice of pizza. The RuneScape wiki lists some accurate canon information about the player. For example, based on the player's dialogue through various quests, we know they had something of a family tree, so it didn't just pop into existence one day. Getting an exact family tree, however, is a bit more difficult. From Serenity in the White Knight's castle, we can learn that the player's ancestors originate from one of these three areas, the mainland of Gielinor and its most frequented places. Interestingly, these differ for each individual player, which means all of our characters have slightly different families. This makes it difficult to get a lot of precise information, but it does mean that all of our accounts aren't related or part of one giant family. Rejoice, E-daters, incest deconfirmed. Anyway, the keyword here is ancestors, meaning this info probably isn't recent. Given the World Gate is located in Kandarin, maybe Serenity is referring to where the player's original family settled down after coming through the World Gate. But that was 5 ages and thousands of years ago, which gives our predecessors plenty of time to relocate. It's also worth mentioning that Serenity deals specifically with heraldry. As much as I love talking about old history and dry traditional stuff, spoilers, that's sarcasm, I'm not gonna get deep into that topic in this video. But hey, if you're interested, go Google your surname and coat of arms and see what comes up. Anyway, the important part for us is this stuff goes way back. Serenity isn't talking about anything recent, but just how long is it talking about here? 100 years? 1,000? We can't say for sure, so we'll have to look elsewhere for more info. Not once during the epic adventures the player has gone through have we seen a single mention of the player's family by anyone else. Even after we become a legendary figure, we don't even hear about our friends or family bragging about knowing us at a local pub or whatever. We scour all over Gielinor from top to bottom, and not once do we find someone who knew us before our RuneScape career began. Wait, okay, fine. Almost. There's actually 3 exceptions. You can stop typing that YouTube comment now. But hey, while you're down there, why not like and subscribe and ring that bell button for future content? In 2013, Jagex released a new tutorial adding the island of Ashdale alongside it. While there's not an awful lot to do there beyond the tutorial, we do get to meet one NPC, Sarah. She says a few different things, like most NPCs that have dialogue, but we do get the big one at the end of the tutorial. As we leave for the mainland, she says she'll miss having us around.
Now, the tutorial was removed in 2019 and this piece of dialogue went with it, so you could argue that it no longer matters.
It wouldn't be the first time Jagex have retconned something. However, even after this removal, Sarah still talks to you as if she's known you for a long time, both in regular dialogue and post-quest dialogue for Shadow over Ashdale. From a time long before former Fred agreed to let some weird stranger share his sheep for him. For our second exception, Godric the Dwarf from Shadow over Ashdale refers to the cargo being sent to the island as something the player probably already knows. Another holdover that shows the Ashdale origin story is likely still canon. And lastly, we have Ned Swarbrick, an NPC sitting by the Ashdale campfire. When you ask him who he is, he gets angry with you and says that you know full well who he is.
He then goes on to say that his family has been in Ashdale since the beginning, when it was founded in the 4th Age 400 years ago.
So we know that the player wasn't raised on the mainland, but there's not enough to say when the family moved. Maybe our family was there from the start, maybe they moved there when the player was born. Maybe we'll never know. As one quick point of interest during the quest What Lies Below, stop sniggering, the player mentions knowing a character named Rick Shaw. Interestingly, there is no NPC with this name anywhere in-game, so either the player spent some time in a place we're yet to see, or this is a completely meaningless line of dialogue that serves no purpose. Unless your name is Rick Shaw in real life, in which case you were probably freaked out to see that your RuneScape character knows your name. But still, while a few NPCs might know your character,
it's still odd that no one seems to know your family or at least bring them up during your adventures as the World Guardian.
Where your family are today is a mystery in itself. Other than the possibility that they're living in Ashdale and the player just doesn't want to talk to them, in which case, big mood, there are a few more things we can puzzle together about them. We know through the Kindred Spirits and Tower of Life quest that the adventurer was raised by both their parents and knew them well, meaning that the mother and father stayed close through the adventurer's childhood. Though we don't know the current status of the parents, if they're even alive, we do get an idea on 2 other family members. Examining Sam's hat will tell you that the player's uncle used to wear one just like it, but for some reason, not anymore. During Troll Romance, some dialogue in present tense suggests that the player's grandmother is still alive.
An examine text on the NL piano says the player was forced to play one as a child. But through Ping and Pong's piano in the penguin hideout on the iceberg, we know the player only knows how to play the song Chopsticks.
And by examining even more pianos, it seems the player states they never learned to play, all suggesting the player's piano skills are lacking despite being forced to play one as a child. Additionally, one examine text in the Lunar Diplomacy quest references a mathematics teacher, so we know the player is educated and likely went to school. Although I doubt they had the best work ethic given the success of their piano skills. Also during the Lunar Diplomacy quest, a book called My Life is found, detailing a very brief sentence about the player's origins. In it, it says that a child was born of simple beginnings, with little money to their name and a dream of adventure. An original backstory, I know. Regardless, this all fits so well into Ashdale being the home island of the player, an isolated, peaceful community where there's not much going on. The player coming from simple beginnings proves they're not of royalty or any other significance. Ashdale is a simple place. A place that doesn't have to be rich. Only a boat ride away from a mysterious world where no one's ever heard of the player before. In addition to this, concept art of Ashdale from 2013 shows one of the main houses being titled Player House. Could this be the house the player grew up in? In 2017, ModStew made a comment to Reddit where he explains that Jagex never outright states that the house is the player's, which is true and makes sense. During Shadow over Ashdale, there were several elements inside the house which seemed unknown to the player. After the tutorial was removed, the house was made inaccessible outside of the quest. But maybe one of these houses belongs to the player, and maybe one of them houses our beloved family. Maybe one day we might even get to see them. Although, while the player came from humble beginnings, that's not to say they were born without a purpose. During the Light Within quest, the player goes back to the 3rd Age and meets Guthix in the middle of the God Wars. Guthix knew then that the player would become powerful and had to become the World Guardian, something future Guthix had already done at the point of past Guthix meeting them. Guthix went on to keep an eye on the player since the day they were born, meaning he found their parents prior to the adventurer's birth. During Wild Gothic Sleeps, the Balance Elemental speaks of the player's funeral and that the player died a glorious death, and that the player knows better than anyone that the good die young. In the recently released mini-quest, Foreshadowing, Closure says that the player has at least 1 month to live. This all likely suggests the player will die young, and not by accident. You know, with the stuff I'm digging up about the player, I think I'll stop my research there and leave their family as a mystery. Thanks. I want to end this video by saying that Jagex has stated multiple times that the lore behind the adventurer is mostly up to you as a player and something to find out for yourself.
In role-playing games, particularly a game like RuneScape, I want the player to be able to decide what their background is, rather than us define it for them. We're allowing the player to kind of explore elements of the history of the game, but really it's entirely up to them what their history is. I don't want to do anything that defines their character's past, because that's not what role-playing is.
Make your own backstory and roll with it. Funny dialogue and comedic examine texts aren't really added with the intent to build a story, so we shouldn't think of it as hard canonical lore. Or should we? Although I really am wondering if the player's family exists, or if they're not even in Gielinor anymore. And why don't the players ever seem affected by all the death and devastation they go through? Maybe I'm the exception, but I'd be super down for a quest where we get to learn more about our family. What do you guys think? Comments down below, let's have a chat. Thank you so much for watching. I've always found the player character to be super interesting, and that's only partially because they're me. I hope you all got to share some of my passion for this topic. Anyway, my name is Will Missit, and I'll see you all later.